With 4 million sounds, what will you create? Take the free trial today.
Hey Phin, how you doing this lovely sunny Friday morning? Obviously we're not recording this live at Superbooth because this is part of our Superbooth at Home edition, so this is all pre-recorded. I hope you're enjoying the coverage so far. And Phin, how are you?
Hello. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm getting a bit frazzled. It's a little bit more challenging doing it this way, but hey, you know, yes. We do what we do. So Phin, you're part of the DBS Music Group where we did a live event there. Must have been a couple of years ago now. And so, is this a DBS Music product?
It's a part DBS Music project. It's part of our modular research group, which is a group of staff and postgraduates and undergraduates and anyone who wants to join really with a good idea. We support the development of that. In whether that be hardware or software or whatever. And this one is being done in close collaboration with one of our alumni who formed Omsonic, who make wonderful filters and oscillators and things like that. And a friend of ours from University of Plymouth, Stuart McVeigh, who did the firmware.
Okay.
For it.
So this is the unit here, the blue one. You've obviously got the nice
blue one, yes,
bit of scope.
Right here. Yes.
Beautiful. So, tell us, what is it we're looking at then?
Aha. Well, we call it an inspiration generator. So it's part sequencer, part random source, but everything is probabilistic. So it draws from this kind of John Cage idea of there's a paraphrase to one of his interviews where he says the job of the composer is to create the situation where complexity may occur. So the idea is that every aspect of a note, its pitch, its duration, its onset, its envelope, whether it portamentos, all of those kinds of things are under probabilistic control. And it's variable probabilistic control. So the more you dial in, the more likely it is to happen.
Right, okay.
And so the idea is that you don't play it like an instrument. You don't program it like a sequencer. You set up the constraints for it to make music and you let it go and it will self-compose, but you can direct it, I suppose, rather like a conductor would direct an orchestra. You can tell it the kinds of thing that you want it to do in real time, and it can be as performable or as repeatable as you want because it will also loop.
Right, okay, so that's interesting. So I notice on the front panel there you've got basically the notes of an octave, all the notes, chromatic notes of an octave, right?
Absolutely. So the higher the fader, the more probable that particular note is to occur. And the settings that I've got dialed up at the moment are most of the notes of C Aeolian. But in addition, along here, you have octave control. So that says when the next note fires, does it displace up or down 1 or 2 octaves?
Right.
And in this vertical column here, this is doing durations. So it's do you want sixteenths, eighths, quarters, and so on. Or with variable probabilities. So if you want mostly eighths but a few quarters and the occasional half, which is more or less what I've set it to at the moment, that's what it will do. And in addition, every single function, every single knob and dial on here has 3 functions. So they're the primary functions, which it's doing at the moment. But secondary functions allow it to do other things. So, for example, all of the durations have 2 other durations they can be if you hold down either the run or the loop button. So you could have dotted notes if you want. So the eighths become dotted eighths and the quarters become dotted quarters. Or you could have irrational stuff like 5/16ths or 7/16ths or 11/16ths for doing more kind of janky experimental stuff. And if you look very carefully, along the row here, you can see in gold A, D, P, R, and L. And those are the second functions of the horizontal row across there. If you hold down run, they do trigger kind of stuff, or actually trigger kind of stuff. So we coined this thing a treg, T-R-E-G, so a trigger stroke envelope. So under normal circumstances, it's sending out ordinary trigger pulses, and those can trigger analog low-pass gates, which is one of the things it's doing at the moment, or digital on-off triggers, it will perfectly happily handle that. But in addition, if you look at the scope, that blue line, the light blue line, the cyan line, they can also output envelopes. So the A becomes the probability that it will have a slow attack. The D, the probability it will have a slow release. P is for pause, so a musical rest. R, ratchets on 16ths. So, for example, if it fired a half note, you'd get 8/16 there of the same note. And then L is legato. So effectively you have a sort of built-in probabilistic ASR envelope, attack, sustain, release envelope.
I guess probably the simplest thing would be to kind of hear it in action and demonstrate what it does, because it's quite esoteric in many ways, or at least when it's described, it's probably sounds more complicated than it is to use.
The interesting thing is, that's exactly what I thought. I thought that this would be a kind of interesting, esoteric second or third module for somebody who already had a setup and they had a standard sequencer. What's been really interesting is we've found as much interest from people wanting it as a first sequencer, because it will just generate stuff on the fly, and particularly if maybe you come from a DJ background where you're really used to manipulating found materials, but maybe have a little bit less experience generating it yourself. It will do that, and then you can DJ with it.
Right. So interesting.
But yes, you're absolutely right.
Press
Why
the
don't we
button.
turn it up?
So it's single channel. Yeah, it's a single channel.
It's 4 channels. So up to there, that's the main module, and that's a single channel. But with the stochastic expander here, you have an additional 3 channels, so a 4-channel device. So everything you're hearing at the moment is being spontaneously, probabilistically generated by the unit.
Including the drums?
Including the drums. What's happening with the drums is I've just got that going into a little Erica Pico drums. But of course, the control voltage, rather than setting the pitch of the drums, is selecting the sample. So it's great at probabilistic sample selection as well.
Wow, okay. So how do you perform with this? I mean, what would you be doing? How would you interact with it? I mean, what would be the way that you would...
Well, if I quiet it down a little bit, so let's mute out... There. So we're just hearing that one voice with a little bit of PWM just for you, Nick.
Thank you very much.
Well, one tries. If I want to... if I come down here...
All right, you're reducing the number of notes that are being played.
Exactly.
There, right.
So I'm going to take some of the other channels down a little bit. There we go. So we're just going to concentrate on this one. And here, I'm just hearing Cs. And if I dial this back, I'm just going to hear some Cs, because it's further back here.
Okay, right. So
see, I don't want all of them.
At the top, it would be sort of every 16th note would be a C, right? If you had it at full probability.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's do that. There we go. And if I dial this up a little bit, I'm going to get more and more and more of them.
Right, okay, so you've just got that, yeah. Okay, I understand.
There we go. Now I'm going to dial in a few more notes. Like that. Now let's displace some of those notes by an octave. So let's say I want all of my Fs to be low. I could hold loop and do that. See, all of those Fs are going low. So that lets me define a kind of a tonic, because the lowest note is going to sort of define the anchor point of the mode that you're in.
Right.
Now I want to spread it out over a few more octaves. So I'm going to open up those octaves. There we go. Let's have a little bit of portamento on there. And that's modelled on the 303 portamento. Some different durations. So I'm going to put in some eighths and some quarters. And we can see on the light blue line that at the moment it's just triggers. So and that's just triggering my RYO aperture LPG. But now if I dial in some envelope action, let's have some attack, some decay.
Okay, right.
And here is some ratcheting. And they all combine. So if you look carefully at that blue line, sometimes you get ratchets that will pulse in and pulse out.
Right, how interesting, yeah.
So you get this kind of beautiful Steve Reich Music for 18 Musicians pulsation thing.
Nice one. Okay, I think I get it. So what's the? I mean, is this is it actually in production now? I mean, or are you?
Yes.
Okay.
Batch 1 is done and sold. Batch 2 is in production at the moment. And if you want one, you just go straight to Omsonic's website. So we'll probably put the link of that in the descriptions. But that's omsonic.co.uk. Omsonic. That has a link to the open manual, so you can read about all the stuff that it does and all of the different modes and some of the advanced operation options. The main module is £275 pounds, and the expander to make it into 4 tracks is another 115s. So for a little shy of 400, you're getting kind of a full 4-track looping sequencer. All of the tracks are completely independent. So when you have one going, what you're doing with the others is completely separate from that, except of course the tempo triggers.
Right.
And it can also think in time signatures, so it can be polymetric, right? So you can have one channel in 4/4,
okay, yeah, I understand.
another in 7/8 or whatever, and it thinks about a bar in terms of always re-randomizing on that downbeat. So if you think about 7/8, you don't know what it's going to do for that 7/8 bar, but what you do know is that every 7 quavers, it's going to fire again. So that gives you a sense.
So it'll give you a 1. You'll always get a 1.
Exactly. You'll always get a 1. Yes.
Oh, that's handy.
And of course, it can also loop as well. So if I just capture a loop like that, I'm going to put it to loop mode. There's our loop.
So you could just sort of window something that you like. Right, okay.
Absolutely, that's the point. So let's make it a little bit less bitty. So if we have it always firing. There we go. Let's capture something there. Put into loop.
And how long is the loop? I mean, how long can the loop be?
Good question. Up to 18 events. And you can play it forward or backwards and select which events you want. So, of course, the way that we normally think about a loop is we start on note 1 and we forward compose it from there, and then that's our loop. That's when we're doing the composition. But of course, in this case, Stochastic is doing the composition. So the way that you think about loops here is you hear Stochastic complete a phrase that you like, and you grab it, and
afterwards.
Afterwards, exactly. So if we go in, let's go into loop latch mode. There we go. So the flashing lights are now showing you that this is the 3 flashing lights. So what you're seeing are 3 notes in the loop. If I dial this back a little bit, my loop's going to get longer. And this note, the very first one here, is now standing for the note 18 ago, if you like. That's the most recent one. So you're going back in time, effectively.
Right, okay.
So if I now do... There's a 5 loop. There's a 4 loop.
Right, okay, I see.
Now we can play it backwards by putting the start point after the end point. Like that. So there you're getting a kind of musical retrograde.
So can you just turn that down a sec? I just wanted to ask you a question.
Course, yeah.
What sort of is there any other because you're turning knobs and stuff? Is there CV interaction? Is there interaction via MIDI or anything like that you can send it from other sources?
Not CV in. Of course, it will take. It has its own internal clock, but it will take an external clock as well. Right. So if that external clock itself is sequenced, you could have a kind of musical isorhythm, if you know what isorhythmic music is. So you could send it a constant trigger rhythm, so dum ba da 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 da, and then it would always re-randomize on those clocks.
Right.
But you would be probabilizing the pitches that it would produce. But it does not have any CV ins such, because what you're trying to do is what I try to do is to find the hinterland between being a sequencer and being an instrument. So you're kind of directly performing on it with. I mean, I'm a keyboard player, so with fingers. That's one of the reasons why the note layout is as a standard keyboard
Right.
with the sharps and naturals on it.
Excellent, Phin. Thank you very much. That looks fantastic. So it's available
Absolute
now. Omsonic.co.uk.
That's the one.
And what was the price again?
For the main unit, it's 275, and for the expander is 115.
Finn, thank you very much. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you very much indeed. Take care. Stay safe, everybody.